Grand Prix is upon us, and GPBlog are going to be covering everything, this time from the comfort of the studio and homes, and we're going to bring you everything from Monza the way we're going to do it on Paddock Update. Tim Kraaij is with me, Jim Kimberley, to go through things from the media day, and a day where it's Italy, so we have to talk about Ferrari, but it's Max Verstappen and Ferrari we're talking about, not Charles Leclerc, not Lewis Hamilton. Tim, Max Verstappen and Ferrari, what's this all about?
Yeah, it's something that stems from last weekend already, where Jos Verstappen and Max Verstappen had their duo interview with Viaplay, covering the Dutch Grand Prix, of course, for their own public, speaking about all the conversations that they've had with multiple teams, and that it was not only Mercedes that they spoke to, but also Ferrari. And in a sense that makes sense, of course, because if you are Max Verstappen, you're not only going to talk to Mercedes, you're going to talk to all the big teams. And at this moment, it's Mercedes, it's Ferrari, McLaren, although they don't really have a spot over there at the moment. Same for Ferrari. And I think that's why it was more pointed towards Mercedes for 2026. Now, that has all been clear because Max is driving for Red Bull Racing in next season. But the thing is that he spoke quite openly about Ferrari now during the weekend here in Monza. Ludo is over at Monza for us for GPBlog. And there was an Italian media session with Max Verstappen where he was asked about the Ferrari dream. The Ferrari dream is something that a lot of drivers have spoken about. It's, of course, Lewis Hamilton now at Ferrari over there. We've had Sebastian Vettel, we've had Fernando Alonso, and, of course, the best example is Michael Schumacher, who had a lot of success with Ferrari as well. And the thing that was interesting to me is that Max changed a little bit in his phrasing of the Ferrari dream, because up until now, the things he said about Ferrari have always a little bit been like, I don't care about the car, I don't care about the color. I want just a fast car. And now, for the first time, he was more openly speaking about Ferrari being a big brand that you would like to drive for. But there was a Max thing in there where it was like, yeah, I'm not going to drive there just for the sake of it. Maybe digging a little bit to some of the former drivers that have been driving for Ferrari. I don't know. But he said, if I want to go to Ferrari, if I go to Ferrari, I want to win with Ferrari. I want to be there because the project is good. And I think that is something interesting to have a look at. Max only wants to drive in the fast cars. And now he still thinks Red Bull is the best car and the best team to be in to win world championships. And he's loyal to Red Bull as well. But he's spoken to Mercedes and he's spoken to Ferrari. And I think 2026 will be a very big year in terms of the future of Max Verstappen. And if Ferrari shows any potential, there is maybe a possibility that Ferrari can get Max Verstappen for 2027 because they have a seat available. Lewis Hamilton runs out of his contract at the end of 2026. And if he performs like he's performing right now, I don't think there will be any extension coming soon on that contract. So, Max being in the market will also be interesting for Ferrari. And I think, like I said, the phrasing of it, talking about Ferrari in that way, talking about that it is big to win with Ferrari. That's maybe the biggest thing to achieve in Formula One, but that's not easy to achieve. And you don't just move to Ferrari for the sake of it. But he only wants to move to Ferrari if he really thinks he can win something with Ferrari as well.
Don't quote me on this, but I imagine this is a sort of question that Max Verstappen would have had to field either at Imola or Monza or Mugello even in the past. Why now? Why is this Max being open to exploring other options coming around now in 2025? Is it just because Red Bull seems to be a little bit on the back foot? Is it the whole Christian Horner situation? It just seems curious to me, the timing of Max being so open and even Jos talking about contract negotiations when Red Bull aren't looking like their favourites and who knows where they're going to be next year.
Yeah, I think that there are doubts, of course, about Red Bull in 2026. And I think that's why they keep their options open. And for 2026, they stick to Red Bull, being loyal to Red Bull. Max even said to Toto Wolff, that's what Toto Wolff said to us, is that he owes them in a way, Red Bull, because they gave him the chance in Formula One. They gave him a quick promotion to Red Bull Racing, gave him the opportunity to win those 4 world titles. But on the long term, he's now in the peak of his career and he still wants to win. And if Red Bull seems to be a bigger project then he can maybe sit out, like if they're on the back or even in the midfield in 2026, is maybe going to be a too long-term project for him to stay around, and then it's maybe more feasible to make a move to a bigger team that's maybe already more far up ahead on the grid. And I think it's interesting because we don't know now what the teams on the front of the field will be in 2026. It might still be Red Bull Racing, although few think that that will be the case. But yeah, for Ferrari, there are some doubts as well. Mercedes is the team that everyone hypes, but yeah, McLaren has the same Mercedes engine in the car as well for 2026. So it won't be an easy fight for Mercedes if they even have the big best engine. And Williams as well with that engine making some big inroads on the top teams as well. So yeah, it's now very hard to think about the team that has the edge for the coming regulations. So I think Max is going to wait, see in 2026 how everything stands, then make his decision for the long term, because he has the contract with Red Bull Racing up until 2028. But the thing is, there are some clauses in that contract which makes that he can leave Red Bull at certain points in that time period. And I think if Red Bull becomes a mid-table team or even worse in 2026, he will have the option to move to another team in 2027. And I think there will be a lot of teams hoping to get his signature for the longer term in those new regulations.
One of the teams he might not conventionally think about going to, but it might be a driver swap or something. Racing Bulls. They were the team snapping on Red Bull's heels. And Isack Hadjar, with that tremendous podium, of course, going to be attracting a lot of headlines. And maybe this is a real reason why Max Verstappen is talking about going. He's going to be scared of the Hadjar revolution. There's obviously now talk about, well, it has been all season, but even more so, more furore, about Hadjar making that step up. Some people may be thinking this year, but it looks like next year is probably more likely. What's the story that we've heard from Monza so far with Hadjar being able to talk about that podium?
Yeah, I think it's quite clear that Red Bull is going to look for another driver for 2026. Yuki Tsunoda, of course, has his contract for this season covered by Honda as well. I think that the chances are very limited that he will be in that car for 2026 if they not already decided on it, which makes that they need a new driver alongside Max Verstappen. A lot of the drivers are already signed for 2026, so that they look at their own talent pool. I think with the performances of Isack Hadjar in the last few races, it makes sense to put him forward as the best candidate for that seat. The other options, Liam Lawson, are you going to put him back into that seat? Probably not, especially not with the performances he has had alongside Isack Hadjar. And after that, we have Arvid Lindblad, but he is still yet unproven in F1, so he needs to make that step up first, maybe next to Liam Lawson in the Racing Bull next year, and then make a first impression before he moves to the big team. So it makes sense for Isack to be the one next to Max Verstappen, and his approach changed a little bit this weekend as well. Maybe talk to some of the management within Red Bull Racing as well, but he was more confident about the fact that he could maybe drive next to Max Verstappen this next year. He was talking about if he would be open for that chance and if he would be ready for that chance, and he was blunt out saying I'm ready for that. And where his approach changed a little bit, because the questions at the start of the season were more on 2025, maybe stepping in this season already as a replacement for Yuki Tsunoda, and he didn't feel ready for that. But he thinks he is ready for 2026, and he had some interesting to add to that, in that he said that 2026 will be an easier year for young guys like him to step into a new team, because everyone starts at zero. No one knows those new car, no one knows those new engines, no new tires, new fuel. We have everything new in F1 next season, and I think that is something. He was spot on in terms of Max is a very quick driver, very experienced driver, but all the benefits that he has in the current team with a car that he knows best, unlike any other driver that's coming into Red Bull, that advantage for Max Verstappen is gone next season, and that's something, more to the benefit of a new driver coming in. Still, there is the big benefit of the experience of Max Verstappen, the experience with the team as well. He knows every person within that team. He knows everything, how to extract everything from the car that he gets. So he still has those advantages, but some of the advantages are gone for Max Verstappen in the fight with Isack Hadjar. So we've seen it with Sebastian Vettel and Daniel Ricciardo in 2014 as well, where Sebastian Vettel was a 4-time world champion, but with new rare cars, Daniel Ricciardo coming in after 2 years at Toro Rosso, and then, being better than Vettel in the first year. And of course, Vettel moved to Ferrari and used that as an excuse a little bit as well as why he was a little bit worse than Ricciardo in that season. But you see how those things can change, and we've spoken here on the Dutch podcast on Monday in the English version, which you can watch at the GPBlog Dutch channel as well, with Günther Steiner, because it was in English this time. But he spoke about it as well, in that F1 moves in cyclically. Like, you have always a new one coming up, and there comes a time where there's someone new that is even quicker than Max Verstappen. And maybe that's Isack. I don't think so, but maybe that's Isack. And that's something that Red Bull will try and see for themselves probably next season already.
Before you go and watch that podcast, which you absolutely should, do stick around Paddock Update. We've got a little bit more to go on. But Tim's giving you an exclusive here that we've got a complete cycle of the driver at Red Bull being ousted by the young up-and-coming guy from the junior team and then going off to Ferrari. It's just worked out perfectly for this episode, Tim. We've got one more thing, and it's not the Verstappen Paddock Update here, I promise you, but Gabriel Bortoleto, the Isack Hadjar title rival for F2, interestingly, the things you've been saying as well, he benefited himself from the new regulations in Formula 2, the dominant team Prema, usually we see at the top. Nowhere to be seen, Gabriel Bortoleto steps up, and showing as well this year, like Hadjar, that he's one of the standout rookie drivers, but he also seems to have ties with the 4-time champion. What did we find out about Bortoleto and Verstappen today?
Yeah, Call of Duty or iRacing, that was the question posed by Max Verstappen as well, because he was seen, gaming a lot with Gabriel Bortoleto. And I think it's a team that we are seeing that Max is supporting a lot of those younger drivers. You've seen it with Kimi, you've seen it with Gabi. And Gabi was quite open about it, that he really likes the conversations with Max, likes the online contact that he has with him as well, but also the advice that he gets on and off track. And I think that's something that Max, over the years, he's always been like the rebel in F1. I think for the first few years he was in, but I think he's becoming more and more a little bit like Sebastian Vettel in a way where he's really mentoring those young guys, trying to help them, trying to ease the pressure of them. And I remember last year when the title fight at the end was in the advantage of Max Verstappen, where we went over to Lando Norris saying, yeah, your time will come. You're still young. You are a quick driver. Things like that really show the empathy side of Max Verstappen, where he's really at ease with those young kids, trying to help them ease into F1. And I think that's a really lovely side to see from him, guiding really those young talents.
Well, one talent not so young, and Bortoleto being very fortunate to get Fernando Alonso as his manager and Verstappen as his gaming partner. I don't know what the best word is. But the other champion on the grid, Lewis Hamilton, I don't know if there's a cycle link you can put into this, but some interesting quotes about his mentor of sorts, Niki Lauda, and a word which I wasn't expecting to be saying, but Lewis Hamilton coming out with the word asshole. Tell me more.
Yeah, interesting to see what the FIA does with that, but more of that later probably. But first of all, there was a question on the influence of Niki Lauda on Lewis Hamilton, his decision to Ferrari. Of course, we know the past, and that Niki Lauda played a role in his move to Mercedes, although Lewis Hamilton said in the press conference that it was not Niki Lauda convincing him to move to Mercedes, but that it was a chat with Ross Brawn that finally moved him over to Mercedes. So he didn't think about Niki Lauda much with the move to Ferrari, but he came with a little story in the press conference where he was talking about that Niki Lauda always used to say things in these times, referring to the bad times he's in now, the moments where he was not performing well. It was making this movement with his fingers to show what Niki Lauda always made as a movement, and then said that Niki Lauda didn't say "give them hell," which is the normal British expression, but he said something else. He said "give them assholes" while making this movement, and Lewis Hamilton was like, yeah, I really, it took me a very long time before I understand what he meant. But yeah, because he asked Niki Lauda as well, do you mean give them hell? And he was like, no, give them asshole. So it was, it was a very strange moment in the press conference. And though talking about that press conference, I was a little bit surprised as well on how the press conference went, because Lewis Hamilton in the press conference, of course, we have the Italian Grand Prix. Of course, he's driving for Ferrari. Of course, he's going to do his first drive for Ferrari on Monza. I think something happened in Zandvoort. Do you know what happened with Lewis Hamilton in Zandvoort?
Oh, he got a five grade grid drop from the double yellows, but I don't think that's what you're referring to.
No, I think he had a crash in Zandvoort. But it seemed like in the press conference that everyone was forgot about that, because we had the Tom Clarkson first bit where nothing of Zandvoort was mentioned. Then we got the TV bit and nothing of Zandvoort was mentioned, and was like, am I the only one? Do the whole F1 paddock have now dementia? But
I mean, I forgot, so maybe.
yeah, but you're British as well, so maybe that's the problem. No, yeah, I don't know what the problem was, but a lot of people forgot that he crashed in Zandvoort. And when he was finally asked about it, he was very positive still, and that was surprising to me. He said it still clicked with the car, that he was overall over the whole weekend happy with how things went, that he was finally won with the car. But yeah, to be then end up crashing with a mistake, not really like a Lewis Hamilton mistake. When he in his peak time, he didn't even make mistakes. So yeah, I would have thought there would be a little bit more critic after that performance, but okay, he was still quite positive. So let's see how he handles Monza, and I think there will be a little more pressure from Italian media over there. I spoke to Ludo just before recording this podcast. He was saying like the Ferrari motorhome, they had the presser always on the top, on the first floor of their building, so you need to go up by the stairs. And it was so full because of all the Italian journalists over there that there were people even standing on the stairs. They couldn't even get to the first floor where the presser was. So full was it with all the journalists over there. So yeah, there is a lot of pressure on this weekend for Ferrari. Of course, last year they did the impossible with Leclerc by winning with a one-stop strategy, with an amazing strategy call by Ferrari. Will something happen again this season? Let's see. But yeah, if we looked at the rest of the season, it doesn't, yeah, you don't have high hopes.
No, you don't. But Lewis Hamilton clearly is not useless anymore. It's the British media who are useless for getting things. But I know the FIA aren't so useless, because he does have that 5-place grid drop, Hamilton, going into this race. So this was for the pre-race Dutch Grand Prix driving too fast. What's Hamilton's views on starting the Italian Grand Prix 5 places below where he will qualify, and especially with his first Italian Grand Prix for Ferrari? It's got to hurt.
Yeah, very frustrated is what he said about that incident, because he said like, yeah, I did slow down, but apparently not enough. He was a little bit frustrated by the fact that he, one, got the penalty, but also even the penalty points. He was of the opinion that it was a little bit too much, and I think it was a recurring theme with a lot of the drivers, because we had Carlos Sainz sitting beside Lewis Hamilton in the press conference, where, yeah, Carlos Sainz was still annoyed with the FIA as well about the decision made with his.
It's on my list, one thing at a time, but it is on my list. We will get there.
There was a lot. So yeah, Lewis was very frustrated, and yeah, I think that there's a big task coming up for him to get near the podium with a 5-place grid drop, and that was not something he was thinking about as well. So yeah, it will be a big task for him to get anywhere near a very good result at Monza.
Well, let's go on to Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz this time last year was racing his last Italian Grand Prix for Ferrari. He's obviously going to be going into this with a lot of emotion, but that emotion seems to be anger after, well, he had a lot of good moments in the Dutch Grand Prix. His radio was, I think, the best radio from the Dutch Grand Prix. The whole, who's getting the penalty? Oh, it's you. What? Brilliant, Carlos Sainz, as ever, very frank on the radio. Has he calmed down yet, or is it a good idea to give him a wide berth?
Calm down in the sense that he's not that emotional. Woo! as he was on the radio. Yeah, still angry. And it turns out that they are now gonna do a right of review, Williams, on the incident to get that penalty turned down. So let's see what comes of that. Carlos Sainz was speaking in the presser that he completely didn't understand the incident, that the fact that he had a moment with Liam Lawson, of course. He went to the stewards after the race. He spoke about it in the press as well, where they came to the conclusion, looking at all the videos, that they made a wrong decision. That's at least what Carlos Sainz said. So let's see if the FIA turns around the decision they made during the race, of course, because that decision they didn't postpone till after the session, but already made the decision during the Grand Prix. So that's interesting. But I think the more interesting thing was the quote from Liam Lawson, because he was asked about the board radio from Carlos Sainz, who was fully attacking Liam. It's always the same guy, stuff like that. And Liam was quite fiery in his response, saying that it was not him that made the error, that it was the steward's decision to make Carlos get a penalty. So it was like, I'm not at fault. He's at fault. He's the one attacking. If I would have been the one attacking, I would have understood it, but this doesn't make any sense. And I'm not the one complaining on the board radio, was a quote from him as well. Not very happy with the way Carlos Sainz spoke, one on the board radio, but also after and now again in the presser with the media. Liam wasn't that pleased with how Carlos handled that all. So interesting to see how that will develop. Both didn't speak to one another since the Dutch Grand Prix. So let's see if they get somewhere close together this weekend, if we have something new coming up.
Yeah, it's always stranger than fiction. These sorts of things seem to happen, and when drivers seem to always end up being around each other after a bit of drama. Obviously, thinking of Lawson and Perez last year, so maybe Lawson Sainz is a new battle a bit further back in the midfield. We'll find out. And Tim, you're going to be covering the race with us on Sunday when Paddock Update will be back. We've had a good time speaking for an extended time today. We'll have an extended episode again on Sunday. If you have enjoyed what you've heard and watched, then please like, comment and subscribe. So a bunch of comments from the last video, so thank you very much. We've read all of them. Tim, we'll be back on Sunday to go through everything. Thank you for everything you brought to us today, and thank you everybody else for watching.